Well, hello, gang. Today we're going to catch up with James from Tanglefoot and Analog Cycles. It's been a while since James and I spoke, and if it seems like our conversation ended a little abruptly or ends a little abruptly, that's because we spent too much time chit chatting before I hit record, and Zoom has a limit apparently on the length of meeting unless you pay. But fear not, part two is forthcoming. Until then, I hope you enjoy the conversation. Welcome back, friends. Happy Monday. I have a very special guest for us today. It's James from Analog Cycles, Tanglefoot Cycles, Discord, 5th season. Hi, James.
Hey, Chris. Good to see you again.
How you doing, pal?
I'm good. It's we finally have leaves on the trees up here, so it's been a long winter,
That's nice.
cold winter.
And
Yeah.
last time, the background looks quite a bit different because the last time we did this, you were in the yurt.
Yeah. So now I'm in our downtown retail space in downtown Pulteney, which is an old pharmacy. Like the wood back here, all these shelves are from 1908 when this was a pharmacy. So it's a pretty cool space.
That
You
was
can see
my
the
first. That was my first year in the bike business.
right, with Orville Wright and those guys.
Those guys stole everything I knew.
I've stolen quite a bit from them.
Yeah.
They're good guys to steal from.
So most of the people watching are going to know you and know your story, but for the rest of the congregation, why don't you just give us a quick rundown?
Sure. So I've been working in bike shops since I was 15, and I'm 41 now. And for a long time, I was just a mechanic. Then eventually, I became a bike fitter. I was a full-time bike fitter using super traditional fit kit stuff, and then eventually a Guru fit machine. And I did hundreds and hundreds of fits for everyone from touring cyclists to top tier triathletes to World Cup downhill racers. Um, and so a lot of what informs what I do with Tanglefoot and Analog Cycles comes from a fit centric point of view, not necessarily getting somebody super fast on a bike, but getting them comfortable and happy on a bike. And now, about 10 years ago, I exited the standard bike industry and started my own bike shop. There was also a coffee bar in Frederick, Maryland. That went for a few years. I sold my stake in that and moved to Vermont and started an off-grid bike shop called Analog, which is now morphed into an on-the-grid bike shop called Analog. And somewhere in there, I started Tanglefoot Cycles, and its sort of sub-brand, which is Discord components, and then 5th season Canvas, which is like a bag and soft goods line. So we wear a lot of different hats here at Analog. There's only 4 of us that work here. But that's sort of a nutshell of what's going on up here.
Yeah, and one of your newer employees is from my adopted hometown of Indianapolis, Indiana.
Yeah, Kat, who wanted me to say hello. So here's your hello from Kat.
Hi, Kat.
She's out in Ohio right now, but she was very excited that we were going to talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like a superstar employee.
Yeah, well, I remember the first time she came into my little shop there on 16th Street, and she was very excited about bicycles.
That's kind of Kat's standard MO about whatever she's into. She's very excited, which is really refreshing because the longer you're in the bike industry, the more jaded you get, and you could get this beautiful whatever and you're like, oh, it's another one of those. But Kat is saying, oh my God, it's a Garbrook cassette or whatever it is. And she still has that thrill of the new, which is cool to see.
Yeah. So I've got a hardtack.
Yeah.
I haven't spent nearly as much time on it as I had intended to, but a question that I have is, and we talked about this before I bought it, is that I've had this thing about low bottom brackets, high bottom brackets, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would always
kind of explain that as, using Rivendell as a baseline for a low bottom bracket,
Yeah,
and
right.
you know Surly, like the Troll specifically, as an example of a bike that had a high bottom bracket, or at least to me
Right.
felt like it had a high bottom bracket.
Sure,
Now
sure.
that hardtack has a relatively high bottom bracket, but it
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
but it doesn't ride like bikes that I've ridden in the past that have high bottom brackets. Explain that.
So I think that largely comes down to in the 90s when high bottom brackets came into vogue. And the reason they really came into vogue was twofold. One is everyone still cruised around with a big chain ring. So they had a 44 tooth chain ring on there, and that decreased ground clearance significantly. And on the East Coast, we have lots of rocks and roots. And so those big rings were getting hung up on rocks. And I think companies like Grove Innovations and Cannondale started to raise that bottom bracket purely for ground clearance issues. They had to raise it really high. They had to raise it to like 13 and a half, 14 inches to actually get good ground clearance. At the same time, those bikes were 90s mountain bikes. They had short head tubes, the bars were low, the saddle was up here. So you really felt sort of over the front of the bike, and you felt like you were very much on top of the bike. The hardtack has a high bottom bracket by contemporary mountain bike standards, but not by a 90s mountain bike standard. It's 12 and a half inches high. And I can keep it low like that and still deal with rocks and roots because of one by drivetrains. The biggest chainring you're going to throw on it is a 36 tooth chainring. So you have like this much more ground clearance just based on the one by drivetrain. And you couple that with a swivel and a tube, and you're sitting much more in the than you are on an old school 90s mountain or a cyclocross bike.
Uh oh.
Or I think me, they ride not like exactly like a Rivendell, but I always describe riding a Rivendell like you're riding in the pocket. And
Hmm.
I feel like the hardtacks and the moonshiners have a similar riding position, but they happen to have a higher bottom bracket, and they're more stable because of that, and they're also better ground clearance and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I was really surprised. It's a it's a fun bike, and it's a quick. It's quick. It
Yeah, yeah.
especially after spending so much time on that bridge club. I got on that hardtack, and it was like, oh, that thing wants to go.
Which is funny because there's nothing about the bridge club per se that should make it sluggish. The only thing I can think of is that it's a huge down tube, and the bridge club maybe I think can feel a little bit dead because it's such a heavy duty stiff bike,
Mm,
and the hardtack's down tube is one diameter smaller, so there's a little more flex going on in there. It's also got lighter weight tubing. It's not light tubing, but it's lighter than Surly just uses like the cheapest, heaviest tubing they can get their hands on.
sure.
The tubing we're using is a little bit more refined.
So the gravel bike, the Sour Mash.
Yeah.
What's the situation with that?
So I don't know how well this will translate. So you just stop me if you can't really see this, but I do have a Sour Mash prototype frame here, and you can see it's all Philip brazed. All the joints are brazed, and there's some cool features like this flared head tube
Mm,
with inset um, BMX style headset cups, which actually adds strength. Manipulating the tubing like that adds strength to the head tube. So the long and short of the Sour Mash is it's we put it on pause for a while because every prototype we were making, we send through mountain bike testing, and which is the hardest testing they can do. It's like an international standard of testing that happens to the bikes, and they do all sorts of impact tests and drop tests and flex tests, and every Sour Mash. And I can talk about why if anyone, if you're interested. But every Sour Mash was failing here, 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 and here. Even when we would make design revisions, and to do prototypes, you're if to do prototypes for testing, they have to build 3 frames and test all of them to make sure that they're doing it in a scientific way, and rather than just the results being a one-off test. Um, so you to make a prototype, you wait in line for the prototype shop to have time. and then you pay for the prototypes to be made, then you pay for the testing to be made, which is done by a different company, and it was absorbing a ton of money. We're probably something like 30 grand into sour mash testing, uh, and every revision wasn't getting us any closer to a solution. So last fall, I just pressed pause on it because we just didn't have the money to keep pursuing what I knew was a good bike, but I just couldn't get it to be as safe as I wanted it to be. Um, and but we've sorted our money situation a little bit, and I'm actively pursuing making it. And I think I know what was making them fail, and I'm just trying to address those issues with the next round of prototypes. Um, so I don't have a timeline on it, but it's going to happen, and I'm really excited about it. I have a Sour Mash prototype, and it's my favorite bike to ride of all my bikes. It's just kind of I think it's probably the bike that most people in America could use because you can use it kind of as a commuter or as a road bike or as a mountain bike. It can just wear a lot of hats without being super extreme in any particular way. Whereas like the Moonshiner, really, it's a big bike, and the hardtack even it really the smallest tire you want to put on a hardtack would be like a 45 millimeter 700C tire, and the Sour Mash looks nicer with smaller tires. It can clear fenders. It's just a more mannered bike, I guess,
All right.
less woolly.
Cool.
Um, and we're simultaneously working on a bike called the Koi Dog, which is like a budget. So the Moonshiner is sort of the really fancy version of the hardtack, and the Koi Dog will be sort of the hardtack to the Sour Mash. It'll be TIG welded, less expensive, more approachable cost wise to build up. So that's also about to head to prototype. I just finished the drawings this morning, actually. So those are a couple projects that are happening,
Nice.
and hopefully we won't have any more failures.
Yeah. Well, I'll hope for the best for you in that respect as well. Um, man, um, what what is your outlook for bike shops in general, or the bike? I guess the bike industry. That's probably a better question because bike shops
Yeah.
too. But the bike industry.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. I really don't think about it too often because
Good for
it's
you.
it's depressing to me,
Yeah.
and I grew up not only working at bike shops but really liking cool esoteric bike shops. I really liked the model that had existed for close to 100 years, where um, manufacturers worked pretty closely with bike shops, and bike shops were always the liaison between the customer and the big bike brands. And now, obviously, with direct mail order stuff, that's going away. Um, one of the reasons I set Tanglefoot up as separate from Analog is I really wanted it to be a standalone brand so that it wouldn't feel like a consumer direct brand, because it's not. I want to be able to sell up bike shops and have people go experience these bikes in person. So, I think there's a number of problems with the bike industry right now. The thing I'm most concerned about is my general concern with like a lack of environmental responsibility, and the amount of carbon bikes that are being produced that are documented as being far worse for the environment to produce than steel bikes are or aluminum bikes are. I just find that deeply troubling that the bike industry, which is supposed to be about enjoying the outdoors, is producing products willfully that are 16 times worse uh, to make for the environment than a steel bike is. I just find that outrageous, and that really troubles me that there's just this wholesale embrace of materials that are just ecologically disastrous. I'd find it just mind blowing. And so that's what worries me the most about the industry. The mail order thing sucks, but
Well, the mail order
that
thing,
other stuff.
we've lived with that forever, but
Right, right.
what we haven't lived with is being in competition with your, kind of anchor brand.
Yeah. Right. Right.
You know, if you're a specialized dealer and now you've got to worry about specialized selling bikes directly to your customers,
Yeah. Right.
um, that's
Oh, yeah.
it's always been a business that's been really tricky and some would say impossible to make money
Yeah. Yeah.
in. And it just seems like um, I said this the last time, you know, that you kind of doing what you're doing and really owning your brand. Um, everybody's not going to be in a position to do that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but it seems like one of the few paths to actually staying in this business and being able to scratch out a living.
Yeah. And even that is, I mean, I could not do this if I lived in a house and had a mortgage. There's no way I could do what I'm doing. It only works because I'm willing to live in a freaking yurt off the grid and barely pay myself anything. Like
Right.
it's all just, I mean, my employees get paid pretty well, but I often don't. And I, I go months without taking any sort, just like, I'm sure you've been in this boat before. You make sacrifices to keep doing what you want to do.
Right.
And that's a non-sustainable thing. That's not a thing I can do forever. I'm eventually going to need to not live in a yurt, and I'm going to want to like be able to press a button to have heat and things of that nature. And so that worries me. I need to get. I feel like I have 10 years to get Tanglefoot where I need it to be to have it be something that I can actually draw a paycheck out of. Right
Yeah.
now, Tanglefoot drains analog. Like the amount of money it takes to get a bunch of frames made, every last penny that we have at analog goes just to that purpose. It's if we had like a line of credit or something, it would be different. But we just bootstrap everything, honestly, the hardest way possible.
Well, and those line of credits are tricky too.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can
Yeah,
get on
yeah.
top of you pretty fast.
Yeah, yeah. The whole thing is, honestly, pretty scary. Um, and I would only be doing what I'm doing because I just believe so much in it. I would never try to be doing what I'm doing to make $1 million or be rich or anything like that. It's just it's just because I love bikes so much that
Yeah.
I'm doing it. It's not a it's not like a smart retirement plan. Let's put it that way.
And I can confirm.
Yeah, yeah. It's difficult world.
Well, tell me, what else do you want to tell the people out there? I'm not going to keep you very long because you're a busy guy.
Well, I'd say, if you liked the last hardtacks and moonshiners, the new hardtack has very few changes, just a couple color changes, which I won't divulge yet. But there is a cool feature. We're always trying to make the hardtack more affordable and easier to build up for people, kind of like Surly was back in the day. And already in the back end, you can switch between 135 QR and 142 through axle just by moving the dropouts. But now the front, we developed a front dropout. I believe it's the first dropout that allows you to do this. That lets you run without any funky adapters, a 12 millimeter through axle hub and a 15 mil through axle hub. And there's just like some nice stainless steel inserts that allow you to switch between those two through axles. So if you have a mountain bike wheel set, which most of them have 15 mil through axles, in a gravel wheel set with 12, you don't have to have two different forks. You don't have to switch end caps out. You can just put these different stainless inserts. And so it's a little thing, but just trying to make that bike a little more versatile, set it up however you want to go. And I'll just show you real quick because I have it here. I'll show you that dropout. I think let's see. So that there's like that stainless steel insert, and that just unbolts. You slide it out, pop the alternative in there. But it's a little detail, but I'm kind of excited about
Yeah.
that guy.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, and then I guess the only other thing is the moonshiners are they have a new fork, and the fork is still not light, but it's significantly lighter than the old one. by a couple pounds. So the front end of the bike gets a lot lighter. And we went to a tapered steer tube to help regain some of the stiffness we lost by lightening the fork up. It's still a beefy fork that passes mountain EN testing, but it's not feathery, but it's a lot lighter than the old one.
Yeah.
So that's really the primary change to the Moonshiner. And all the sizes will fit 29 by 2.8 as well as 27.5 by 3. So a little more versatility there.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, James, I really appreciate you spending some time with me today. It's always good catching up, and this time everybody gets to go along for the ride.
Yeah, that sounds good, Chris. Well, it was fun talking, and I'm sure we'll chat soon. And
Yeah.
good luck with your season.
Thank you very much. We'll talk to you soon.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.